Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next session here in Soiree 2024. The committee that reviewed submissions actually asked that I do this particular session as a just a short 30-minute session, and it's really just I'm presenting, and then our committee chair, Glenn, and uh, also will be joined by Nandini to kind of facilitate the conversation. But the focus on this session is a live virtual event class that I ran at Drexel University. And the crux of this class was that over the course of the 10-week academic quarter, students learned the practices and technologies and skills related to live broadcast and streaming graphics. And the context for that was to have the final project be a full class final project. There were about 20 students ranging from underclassmen in the undergraduate program. So it was generally third year, fourth year, and some fifth year students, along with also master's students. And I think there was maybe one or two PhD students involved as well. And they all actually participated in running a live event that was streamed over the internet. And the core principles were collaboration. Of course, there were some soft skills like that that didn't make it into this bullet list. But of course, understanding the technologies, the skills, and practices that are involved in real-time computer graphics broadcast and streaming. But also, there were a couple other principles at play. Wanted to introduce the students to industry directly. So there was contact and engagement with industry professionals. And that was both in the form of industry pros that collaborated with the class in terms of the live event itself, but then also that live event was presented to industry professionals. And that public presentation is another uh, tool that I love to turn to in using and teaching concepts, is essentially having the students have an opportunity to present what they've learned publicly. It seems to be something that they really cherish. They really enjoy that opportunity. And it also kind of ups the ante for them in terms of developing an understanding of the skills that they're using and that are being presented in class. So when we executed this live event, we utilized two of our studios. So we had a main studio with a large green screen cyclorama, as well as a smaller studio across the hall. And so that involved connecting them via Ethernet as well as SDI for all of the video feeds. And then an adjacent equipment room was turned into an ad hoc production control room. So the students that were working in there were actually sitting amongst a lot of equipment cases and such, because that's the primary use of that room. But it worked out really well in that you can see in the slide, the lower section, we just threw some blue LED lighting in there, and it turned everything into something that looked like we knew what we were doing. In terms of the technical principles the students were picking up, all the students were involved in creating CG sets. So they were all computer generated. There was some custom modeling used. There was some photogrammetry used. There was some assets used from marketplace type of assets, and they were also learning to use a motion capture system to track cameras, the camera technology, all of the SDI tools for transporting the video live into video switchers and then ultimately broadcasting that. So the students were working with all of that. And the industry involvement included connecting. There were representatives from industry from Epic Games. That was BK Johannesson, actually joined the broadcast from Europe. Bob Caniglia from Blackmagic Design. Oh, I'm sorry, BK Johansson's from Epic Games, involved in their broadcast media market segment. Bob Caniglia came in from Blackmagic Design, and Alex Lindsay joined, and he is known as a live event producer. And so all of them participated in the presentation, engaged in conversation with the students. Some even joined the class in the weeks leading up to the presentation to share industry stories. So that's how they connected to industry. And ultimately, when we executed this presentation, it's had kind of like the lead up, the show countdown. We filled that time with student demo reels. So the student demo reels got to be played out before the event started. And then the first half of the broadcast involved students presenting the technologies used in the broadcast itself. So they were showing off the cameras that they learned to use, the tracking systems. So they were essentially teaching what they had learned during these segments. And then the students were involved in the second half of the event in terms of having conversation with the industry pros. The industry pros were showing some of the technologies that they work with every day. And so that's how that whole thing all came together. And, we kind of wrapped up with, of course, having rolling credits for everybody's name getting displayed, and did a little group shot with the students, and everything went really, really great. I think it was a great experience for everybody. And that was it. We did all of that in June of 2023, and that's a wrap. The entire live event is available on YouTube. The link is there on the slide, and I'll copy paste that into the chat so that folks can see that. And so that's it for the really quickly presented presentation side of the content. And so I'm open to any questions about any of this. I'm on my side. I've got the chat open. I've got the Q&A open, and of course we have Nandini and Glenn here to chime in with any questions and facilitate the conversation.
Thank you, Nick. This is really exciting to hear. I think Glenn.
Well, no, I mean, I can start with a question.
Sure, yeah.
Obviously, we'd like, people that ask questions, and we'll go to them. In terms of the, all right, we have a question. I'll take others' questions. Richard Thompson asked, what 3D worlds did students interact with?
So, well, interact and virtual worlds are very broad topics. So the students built the virtual spaces themselves in using mostly Maya and Unreal Engine. There was a bit of photogrammetry used. So there was one student that, even before this class ran, had been asking for a drone flight over a really large statue of the Drexel Dragon. So that's Drexel Dragon is named Mario, and you can see that dragon there in the background of the screen share shot. And so that was a photogrammetry result. And so they created a virtual world of their own that way. But another aspect of the virtual worlds and interaction was the idea that, similar to Soiree, that the event should interact with the audience. And so one of the pre-production teams was focused on the technicalities of how do we get questions in from both Zoom and YouTube chat, since it was being streamed over both of those platforms simultaneously, and how do we bring those questions and those interactions into the virtual space. And I'd share that one of the things that they did, I'm trying to see if I can go backwards in this slideshow here. There we go. This slide here is showing there was a ticker tape in this virtual world. And so the students actually developed a tool using Google Sheets API where one of the students would be responsible for mining any chat typed into YouTube. Another student was responsible for mining any questions and typed in chat from Zoom, and they would paste those questions into a Google Sheet spreadsheet. And through the API, that spreadsheet would be fed using JSON into Unreal Engine. So anything that was deemed a comment would be posted into a comments column on the spreadsheet, and it would show up in the ticker tape live in the background of the virtual space. And then anything that was a question would actually be used for lower thirds. So in one of the images here, there's a question posted in the lower thirds of the broadcast. And so that actually was brought in, again, through that same spreadsheet, and then shared via computer via SDI feed so that it could be overlaid. So that was how the students built those things. Those were kind of the tools, the virtual worlds that they were working with.
How did you get students to decide what each one did, or did they all do everything? And if they specialized, how do you assure that the students learn more than just whatever it was that they specialized in?
Oh, that's a really good question. That is one of the biggest challenges in teaching a course like this as an instructor. Um, I did not know what the mix of talents, backgrounds, interests would come into this class. This was actually listed as an open elective class with no prerequisites. So there were computer science students with zero computer graphics experience that joined. There were visual effects and animation students that had no experience with real-time graphics at all, let alone, Unreal Engine specifically. So I walked in with a very open syllabus of these weeks we're going to prepare for the event. On this week we're going to run the event, and that was most of the extent of the before the course launched syllabus in terms of the schedule. And so there was a lot of discussion in the very first week of, okay, this is what we're going to do. The students were really motivated by the fact that they would get to interact with industry professionals. So uh, the folks at Epic Games and Blackmagic and Alex Lindsay had said, yeah, I want to be part of this. Epic Games education liaison Deanna Deerywacker had already said, yeah, we'll find somebody to be part of it. And I was also talking with someone from Blackmagic in their marketing department. And they said, yeah, we'll find somebody. So the students became motivated to be a part of the event in that very first week, and so then it became it was an opportunity for the students to express, okay, there were going to be certain pre-production teams, uh, so that we knew we needed to have some kind of tool developed to be able to post questions and be able to display questions or comments in the 3D world. And so who wants to work on that? And we knew we needed to build a 3D world. Who wants to work on that? And we also knew that we needed people that would be dedicated to operating the cameras, operating the video switchers, handling audio. And so we kind of defined that these were going to be the day of production teams and the things that needed to be done beforehand. And thankfully, we had at least one person that volunteered as a lead for each of those spaces. And most of those different teams had all the people that they needed to cover them. And then each class session itself covered all of the technologies in some way. So everybody was learning about the video tools, the SDI connections that go between them, and how the video switcher operated and how it was remote controlled over Ethernet, and how the different screens work together. And so everyone was exposed to that and had an opportunity to play around with it, but then they stepped into dedicated roles for the event itself.
We have two questions, or also
Sure.
Kevin McNulty asked, did any of the presenters seem interested in hiring any of the participating students, or were any internships offered?
So we didn't get any specific commitments. And I think part of the comfort that the participants had, the industry participants had, is that they weren't being put on the spot for anything other than sharing their knowledge specifically. That said, Alex Lindsay in particular was like, okay, if these students know this and they want to come out to California and work, just send them my way. I think that a lot of these streaming events are leaning increasingly into using real-time computer graphics, and rather than just purely pre-produced two-dimensional graphic renderings and such, the use of these 3D real-time tools is growing, and that's both in full broadcast as well as internet streaming for corporate events, and even YouTube casters and esports events and that sort of thing. So there was definitely an expression of interest in students. It turned out, some of these students were, still have a couple of years to go before they graduate. One student that was involved in this event actually ultimately landed a job in a I don't know if I'm allowed to name the company, but I'll share that they're involved in the 3D virtual production graphics for the upcoming Super Bowl. And so, so this is their senior year when they participated in this. They graduated, and by the time they attended the SIGGRAPH conference in August last year, they had landed their position with a computer graphics broadcasting shop, and so yeah, I'm pretty excited for her. So yeah, it worked out really well.
And Rajani Spitz has a question. Nick, what would you do differently from 2023 if you did it again this year? And is there anything that changed drastically during this last year that you would like to incorporate into a 2024 class?
Oh, really great question. So I think the biggest thing that was a blind spot for me in organizing the class was I did not spend enough focus on audio. So when it came to the technical aspects of the class, audio was the one thing that, and we had a couple students that stepped up. The one was actually, there's a major in music industry. And so we did have a music industry major who was well versed in audio in general. But during the event and in the days leading up to the event, I realized that I did not give that enough attention. I was so focused on the computer graphics and video technology that I could have used more attention there. So that's one of the big learning experiences I had as an instructor from this itself. So two things that if I'm doing this again in 24, I'm actually anticipating Epic Games announced, they announced it a couple of years ago. They're adding motion graphics technology to Unreal Engine. So kind of repackaging some of the functionality that already exists specifically towards high-end motion graphics. So some of the things that the students needed to kind of build up from scratch with the Google Sheets interconnectivity is being built into creating 3D lower thirds and Maya Houdini style kind of particle graphics, but with a motion graphics bent, where they can be operated, live on demand. So those kinds of things should be. I think what Epic has shared in their last presentations on this tool called Avalanche is that we should be seeing that soon this year. And so I would love to incorporate that. And then also the folks at Zoom announced that they're releasing sometime this year a Zoom plugin for Unreal Engine, which would allow the video feeds from a Zoom meeting to be fed into Unreal Engine as textures, as well as all of the interactions. So when chat entries and questions go in, or the little reactions we do when we raise our hands or love something with our hearts and party and all those sort of things would actually be able to be used within the real-time graphics engine. And so those two things are big things that I'm looking forward to seeing released, and I would want to incorporate. When we brought our live industry professionals into this show, we had them in a separate Zoom meeting as the Zoom webinar, and we used the Zoom SDK. There's something called Zoom ISO that allows the Zoom participants that were in our kind of backstage Zoom meeting to have their video feeds shared via isolated SDI, so that then they can go into our video switcher, and that's how we kind of added them into our super sources here. That SDK that was used to build that is now ideally coming out as a plugin for Unreal Engine. So those are the two big things that I'm anticipating for this year that would love to incorporate into this sort of thing.
So that's well, Johnny asked a question about AI. Could do it quickly, however, we are already over time.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. So yeah,
So how about, is there
our next
anything,
session needs to start in 9 minutes. So I'll make sure to wrap this up. But yeah, how about AI? So I really encourage students to leverage AI tools to make it so that their work is more efficient and better. I feel like kind of eschewing AI would be like someone who's a welder that would be avoiding learning how to use a welding robot. I think that AI could be a tremendous tool for our students. So I really encourage them to use it. So right now, I tend to encourage it as kind of like a creative tool of exploring creative ideas to rapidly go from I've got an idea in my head and I need to get it on a screen in front of people. So that's one of the things that I do encourage my students to do. And so I do hope that they'll leverage it and in the years ahead.
okay, so thank you, Nick,
Yeah,
very much. Thank you for everybody participating. I suspect we could have gone longer on this if we had scheduled it a little differently, but we have a short break, and then Maya and then Dini will be presenting. And then
yeah,
after that, just so
along
people
with Vincent
realize,
also.
after that, we go to the West Coast and really far west. So we go to at 4 o'clock, we bring Judy Krieger from Woodbury and Melody Lee from the University of New South Wales in Sydney. So there's still more to come.
Great. I'll pause the recording.